Hi everyone, welcome to another live Instagram post from the Astrological Association. I'm Leanne McCafferty, and today we're tuning into something very powerful, very ancient and very present, and what I'm calling today the goddess frequency. So this week the cosmic feminine is fully online. I tell you, so much, it's really taking over. Hi everyone that's joining in. So Ceres is going to join Uranus and Sedna today. They're all together today at 2 degrees of Gemini, and it's a really rare electrifying alignment. And it's going to upgrade our intuition. It's going to rewire our perception, and it's going to awaken the deeper intelligence of both the body and the mind. And for some of us at the moment, this might feel completely exhilarating, but for others, it could feel like our brains are completely wired, fried, and there's like a mental overload going on. So if that's how you're feeling, you are not the only one. Please don't worry. There's a lot going on. Hi, everyone that's coming in. And I think Mercury moving into Cancer earlier this week, of course, Mercury is ruling all of the planets that are in Gemini at the minute. It's really important. That's adding to the mental and emotional wavelength that we're all feeling as well. This is all about what's going on in the head as well. All right. So hi, there's loads of people coming in. It's lovely to see you all. Thank you for coming in. So if you have been feeling the shift, and perhaps you've been having like sharper insight, or just that inner knowing, or sudden clarity, or just a sense that your mind is upgrading, you're not imagining it, you really aren't, because the goddess frequency is rising. And Ceres and Uranus and Sedna are really aligning in a way that doesn't just shift the sky, it's shifting us on a very personal level as well, but perhaps connecting us together. There's something about the hive mind here I'm curious about. But it is like we're kind of retuning our radios, we're switching the radio channels, we're switching our minds to a higher frequency. It's like we're changing our bandwidth as well, aren't we? I would say as well, please do tune into your dreams at the minute. Keep a dream diary, because I suspect lots of you are having really vivid, kind of profound dreams. So do pay attention to them. And if you want to know a little bit more about that, myself and Mandy Lockley, another key member of the Astrological Association board, we released a video on this. Oops, sorry. So you can go and see that on the Astrological Association website, or my YouTube site, but there's lots more there too. But all of this is happening against something, a backdrop of something much, much bigger that we're all feeling. A growing awareness of the patriarchy, of misused power, of systems that no longer serve us. And this alignment is plugged directly into that. So let's set the scene a little bit, all right? And I'm going to bring Juno in here because she's a goddess and she deserves to be there. So we're in a year shaped by Juno forming 3 conjunctions with Pluto, end of April, end of July and beginning of November. And that's a transit that exposes the misuse of power structures. It renegotiates human rights, and it asks us to confront what we're no longer willing to tolerate. And there's so much anger around when we watch the news about human rights and the control of information. I'm thinking of the Epstein files, the Mandelson files here in the UK. And it's about the control and the power of information, okay? So what I'm saying today, it sits inside something much bigger. It's a much bigger evolutionary wave, one where truth and transparency and accountability is rising. And we need to think of that long-term grand sextile, that so-called magic triangle that we have in the sky at the minute between Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Aries, and Pluto in Aquarius. They're all in the early degrees of fire and air signs. Juno's next to Pluto, working with Pluto, and Ceres and Sedna are plugged into Uranus. They are plugged into this grand magic triangle, whatever you want to call it, that's fine. that in effect, they're all part of the same collaborative team. This is teamwork, cosmic teamwork, if you like. And I've been rattling on about this for ages, but we need to keep in mind the last time that Uranus was in Gemini, Neptune was in Aries, and Pluto was in Aquarius was back around 1400 BCE. So it was kind of coming to the end of the Bronze Age. We were seeing the beginning of urbanization, long distance trade networks, and, you know, cultural progression prior to the Iron Age. During this time, some of the Bronze Age civilizations collapsed. There was a decline in literacy and trade routes, but there was socio-political unrest and climatic changes, and very similar to what we're living through today. Anyway, coming back to today, the micro to us, this week started with Mars square Juno. That was exact yesterday around 10:11 of the fixed signs. All right, there's so much anger around, there's protests everywhere, and Juno's forcing us to open our eyes to what we won't tolerate anymore. It's like enough is enough. All right. And then on top of that, today we have Sedna and Ceres and Uranus joining together around 2 degrees of Gemini. And the Sabian symbol, for any of you who are fans of those Sabian symbols that come from somewhere beyond, you know, they were kind of divined through mediumship. It's fantastic. It's Santa Claus furtively filling his stockings in front of a fireplace. All right. To me, that suggests something exciting's happen, that there's going to be new and exciting gifts coming. Something's going to be delivered on a cosmic or collective level, but there's a massive sense of anticipation as well. I'm sure you can all feel that. And I would say at this point, I do think our nervous systems are completely, there's a lot going on, isn't there? Overwhelming in some cases, but our nervous systems are perhaps being given the gift of an upgrade. All right, it might be easy for some of us depending on your natal setup. It might be a little bit more challenging for others, but just be aware of it. And if you are feeling like your nervous system's just be a little bit kind for yourself. You know, just try and find ways of switching your mind off. Get out into nature, get away from your screens, get away from social media. Yeah, we've said all that stuff before, but just be mindful of it. So I'm going to come back to the patriarchy theme here. All right, and the mythic lineage, if you like, because this is where the deeper message lies. So all three of the deities that I'm focusing on right now, Uranus, Ceres and Sedna, they share a story of parental rupture, a breaking of the bond, a severing that becomes a portal to evolution. And each of their myth contains a commentary on power and control and the consequences of misusing the power or authority. So let's start with Uranus, you know, the sky father, if you like. So he suppressed his children, hid them inside Gaia. Then he was castrated by his son Saturn. So it's the archetype of patriarchal control, the fear of being challenged, the fear of the next generation rising, or the fear of being swallowed by one's own creativity. And when I'm talking about social media, we do need to make sure that we're not completely consumed by it, and that we don't castrate our own creativity by relying on technology too much. But the rebellion that followed the whole Uranus myth, it was quite violent, but it birthed freedom. You know, it separated heaven and earth, if you like, and it broke the old order. And of course, we're seeing that in many areas of the world now. All right. Then we come to the myth of Ceres, okay, whose daughter was stolen and, you know, by Pluto, taken down into Hades, violated. So an abduction by a male authority figure. And of course, Ceres's grief altered the seasons. You know, what became fertile became barren and vice versa. So that myth is full of the misuse of power over the feminine, over the body, over autonomy. But it also demonstrates the negotiations that followed afterwards. It was like the first cosmic custody agreement, and you'll always see Ceres present in charts of children and parents involved in custody agreements. So that was kind of like the first challenge to patriarchal dominance, if you like. Then we come to Sedna, the betrayed daughter. The myth is quite complicated, and I'm kind of condensing it down a little bit for today. But it was a real indictment of patriarchal abuse. Her father threw her overboard, cut her off her fingers so she couldn't cling to the boat, which was a lifeline. And yet, from those severed fingers came the whales, the seals, the life of the sea. It was fertile and creative. So Sedna shows us that even in the deepest betrayal, the feminine regenerates. She becomes more powerful than the one who harmed her. She's born anew. So all three myths reveal that when power is misused, something rises to correct it, or something wonderful and creative comes out of it. Power's reborn in a purer form. Something's created from the trauma, the chaos and the desperation, created from the darkness. And right now, this goddess frequency might be that very correction that we need, the planet needs, the cosmos needs, if you like. And if we come back to the myth of Uranus, you know, when he was castrated, his genitals were thrown into the sea and created a foam from which Aphrodite, the goddess of love, was born. So maybe there's a deeper message there that love might overcome all these patriarchal situations that we're dealing with centuries and centuries on, that, you know, the feminine principle still has a long way to go, doesn't it? Let's face it. You know, Sedna's fingers, they became the fruits of the sea. Ceres's grief became the route to collaboration and civilized negotiations. So let's come back to now, away from the myth a little bit. This really is an evolutionary moment that we're all living through, all right? Sedna hasn't been this close to the Earth, its perihelion, since the dawn of agriculture, around 11,500 years ago. And that was kind of the last time humanity reorganized itself. Now she's joining with Uranus, the planet of rebellion and liberation and awakening. Awakening is a key word to keep, because there's something in our minds that's being awakened right now. And of course it's in Gemini. It's all that mercurial stuff. And together, along with Juno and Pluto, remember that grand sextile, they're all plugged into, they're exposing the abuses of authority and patriarchal structures, the places where power's been hoarded, the systems that rely on silence are there. And I'm just reading a message from Mandy. Interesting that Ceres is about the bounty of the earth, of the harvest. Sedna in our myth controls the bounty of the oceans. Uranus is the primordial sky god. Exactly. Thank you, Mandy. Thank you. But I think as well, we can tap into all of these myths, and there's a collective anger and grief. Ceres was grieving. You know, Sedna was angry, and she went down into grief when she went into the depths of the freezing cold, frigid sea, if you like. Uranus and Saturn, there was a lot of anger and fear and feels of, you know, threat, that type of thing, and betrayal as well. And I think we're all feeling that at the minute. So how do we get past that? And I think this is where the raising of our consciousness and being mindful of our thought patterns is really, really important. And of course, Ceres brings the feminine intelligence. This is Gemini, it's about intelligence, and it's about the body, the earth, the cycles of life and death. And she's amplifying, I think, a call for autonomy, as is Juno, the reclamation of feminine power, all right, demanding accountability. All right, I think we're all shouting out for accountability in many areas of the world. And it's about the refusal to be controlled anymore. And this includes the control of information. And Juno's right on top of all of that at the minute, along with Pluto. But I think Ceres at the minute is going to help renegotiate not only new trade routes, the way we trade, but and that would involve resources of all kinds, but it's about how we trade information, all right, and it's how we process information, all right, and how we communicate with each other. you know. So this isn't subtle astrology, it really is evolutionary astrology that we're living through. And yeah, today it's kind of pinpointing it in one particular date, but this is much bigger. It's going to ripple out for decades after today. And, you know, let's think more about the collective themes, because I'm talking about it rippling through into the future generations. You know, I've got a 15-year-old son. I'm, you know, sure some of you may be parents or have younger people in your life. So let's think about what this means for us and for them. Of course, those are the awareness of the patriarchal patterns. That's just huge at the minute, isn't it? So, you know, we're seeing globally and personally where power has been misused, where voices have been silenced. This is Gemini, it's happening, and it's about voices, okay? It's about sharing messages, sharing information. And it's also about where our autonomy has been denied, where our voices are shut off as well. And it's kind of saying, no more. This can't happen anymore. It's also about severing old mental patterns. So just like Uranus breaking free from suppression, we're breaking free from internalized patriarchal thinking, or the beliefs that keep us small or compliant or silent. These goddesses don't want us to be silent. They want us to share our voices. Okay. I think it's about rewriting social contracts too. You know, Juno's always about reshaping human rights, and Ceres and Uranus and Sedna, they're all going, yeah, we need to break through. We need new visions. We need new archetypes of human rights. And again, it's all about what are we no longer willing to tolerate. And I think as well, something about the feminine intelligence rising. Okay, and when I say feminine, it's not gendered at all. You know, this is archetypal. It's about that inner that inner receptive energy that we all have, that ancestral energy, because everyone has a mix of masculine and feminine energy within them. But it's about the intelligence of intuition, you know, the embodiment of emotional truth. And cyclical wisdom, inherited wisdom. There's some, I mean, Sedna's so far away out in the beyond of space. You know, we can't imagine how far she is away from us. You know, that cycle's about 11,500 years, but she's really, she's at her closest point to us right now. And she's drawing on something very deep, deep wisdom, deep trauma, and everything that can be bountiful once we rise above that. And in that case, it's about the pain of growth, isn't it? You know, I think all three of these archetypes, these myths, show that evolution often comes through rupture and trauma and challenge and going through the dark times, because what is severed becomes fertile, and it can be a source of creativity if we open our minds to it. So just some things to reflect on, I guess, in your life. Where have you experienced misuse of power? All right. Where have you perhaps been silenced, or where are you witnessing people being silenced? Where have you ever had to sever a bond in order to survive? And then what grew after that? It's like almost like one door closes and another one opens. And I really think this stellium, because it is a stellium of Sedna, Ceres and Uranus and Gemini, it's a great big door opening to various different opportunities. Another key consideration, what are you feeding your mind with at the minute? Ceres is a planet of nurture. It's a higher octave of the moon. So think what you're nurturing your body and your mind with. That's really important at the minute, especially with our nervous systems being so challenged at the minute. That's pretty much it, I think. It's just really this goddess frequency, the part of you that can and will endure after the severing of something that's no longer helpful. All right. And, you know, once you've descended down into those depths, it is a little bit like the descent of a Nana, I guess, and, you know, a Pluto descent, if you like. You always rise with new wisdom and new strength. All right. So I think because it's in Gemini as well, which is associated with breathing and the lungs, we have to be very mindful of how we're breathing at the minute. I bet there's so many of us at the minute holding our breaths. Okay, holding our breaths because there's so much tension. Our minds are completely overloaded, overwired, undergoing this immense transformation, and we're not breathing. So we really do need to focus on our breath work. I think that's so important. I think we have to tune into all those themes of trauma, rising above them now and letting them go. And then just trying to tune into the love. Like I was saying in the myth of Uranus, where Aphrodite was born from his genitals that were cast into the sea and created foam. It's like there's got to be some love coming out of this amongst all the chaos that we're living in, because sometimes that's the only way through. That's what we can hold on to. And just nurturing each other. This is a collective. This is about our neighbours. This is Gemini. We have to sort of nurture our communications with our neighbours as well, with each other. We're all part of this evolutionary moment, and it's collective teamwork. Yeah. So it's about aligning our hearts and our minds and intentions and raising our vibration intentionally. Okay. Raising our perspective. Because as humans, we should be striving to do better, to create something to be proud of, and to be supporting each other during these challenging times, and to think bigger, to think better, to open ourselves, because there's got to be a better way. And I really do think this is going to start filtering from the unconscious upwards. So again, pay attention to all of those dreams that are coming through, or just those insights. You might be out walking to work or walking the dog or at the gym or swimming or whatever. You're going to have flashes of insight, and pay attention to them, because they are telling you something without a doubt. So just to finish up, you know, Ceres, Uranus and Sedna, they're not just planets, they're archetypal teachers, especially in Gemini. All right. And they're showing us where power is misused, and where our consciousness can rise because of that. So when the old order suppresses, the feminine awakens and rises. And when something's severed, something new is born. And they're together. It's like they're in a alembic vessel. Okay, they're in a cauldron pot. There's some alchemy going on here at the moment, all right? There's something bigger and better bubbling up for all of us if we just open our bandwidth and let it in, all right? So thank you so much for tuning in and for rising to this new frequency, because none of us are really going to be living through this again in our lifetimes. It is quite magical. So just a couple of things about the Astrological Association. You may be aware there's a petition at the minute going around about the trademarking of astrocartography. Please do head to the Astrological Association website and sign that for us. We're nearly at 10,000 signatures, which is absolutely fantastic. This is about the sharing of information and keeping it free and accessible for all of us. All right. And also we have the Astrological Association conference in September. We'd love to see you there. It's going to be absolutely magical. It's the most beautiful venue, hotels, spa, etc. And it really is a wonderful experience. So thank you for tuning in, everyone. I hope that just provided a little bit of insight for you. And yeah, just embrace this goddess energy. We all need it. Okay, take care, everyone. Bye.